Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we're continuing our discussion this week about athletic development, and today's show is all about the role of the coach and the program that they're putting you through. Yesterday we talked about the idea of training versus entertaining, and today we're going deep.
Greetings, if you're new to the tribe, Rich is behind the mix, Rad is at the table with me, Yanni Bormeister, and we are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unify Movement System, the only program effectively balancing strength, flexibility and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. Get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month free. Now, before we get started, warm welcome. If you are on the live stream in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group, leave a comment and we'll send you back some love. Remember, anyone can join and interact. And lastly, shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit that like button, support the channel, and subscribe if you like what you see. Again, joining us today is Phil White from ADPT Physio. How are you, brother?
Good. Had a great morning of teaching people to do some low bar squatting, which is just what gets me going. So feeling good. Excited to chat about this topic.
Love it. This is a good topic, and I have my sunglasses on my head. I'm not sure why. Someone could have told me that.
Is that different?
It is bright in here, so I understand. You know.
How are you, Rad?
I'm pretty good. I've got rid of the beard, and man, does it feel good. I don't know how I let myself go much, but I think it's because we haven't been doing any video filming, and normally before we film any YouTube videos, I look in the mirror and go, oh shit, I better go and shave.
Stop ragging on the beard.
My wife gives me so much stick about it. She goes, yeah, you never bloody make yourself look good for me, do you? It's just for your YouTube videos.
Mate, you should have seen one of the comments that came through yesterday about your feet. It was hilarious.
About my feet.
The distressing thing was that it was quite positive.
On YouTube.
Some chick was like, it was one of the videos that we've done in the past about barefoot training, and she goes, oh, I'd like to get involved with those feet. Like it was like this real like kinky, yeah.
That's a lot. So
shout out to Clay Conway. Welcome to the stream, brother. If you are on that stream, let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. We love you long time. Guys, We're talking about the role of a coach and a training program. This week we've gone deep into the notion of functional movement patterns and what we believe are functional movements because they carry over to athletic performance. We've built a strong argument as to why movement complexity should be the very last thing that you progress, because it is very hard to apply the principle of progressive overload, which is probably the single most important principle in strength and conditioning, both for the development of fitness, cardiovascular fitness, muscular strength, maximal strength, and also flexibility. Without progressive overload, really, you go nowhere. And today we're really going to talk about, the role of a good strength or strength and conditioning coach or personal trainer or exercise physiologist or physiotherapist in all of this, and also the role of an exercise program and really what you should do. And we've spoken about this before, and it is very important that we understand that, when we come to the gym or we exercise, we are doing that for something, and it's very different to the reason why we would go and compete or take to the field, and we feel that people get that a little bit confused. And today we're going to talk about how to not confuse that, and then once we understand that, okay, when I go to the gym, I'm not competing. That's my moment to prepare for my competition, and your competition can literally be everyday life. It can be like, I just want to perform at a really high level in life in general. I want to be able to run around with my kids. I want to be able to lift my kids over my head, and I want to be able to do that for a very long time, or just feel confident when I'm at work or whatever else. That's totally fine if that's your competition, but go to the gym and get good at that.
Yeah, I think like the kind of way to think about this is it's almost like thinking about like teaching. Like sometimes coaches and physios and everyone kind of gets caught up in like teaching very specifics instead of teaching principles. And so you kind of think about like the different variables of load capacity, strength and flexibility, and all the workout variables that are involved in that as almost like teaching people the alphabet. And then sometimes coaches get the mistake of imagining someone who had never learned how to speak before and was teaching them very specific words to go and use in context. And sure, that's very good for like if you need to speak the word that is doing a bicep curl and a BOSU ball. But then if you go out into a sports field and you haven't learned the alphabet, you don't know how to basically be adaptable and use those principles of how a word is formed to then speak whatever language you need at that time. So a bit of a weird little analogy there, but I'm trying to work on analogies to get things across. But basically it's like you want to be learning like principles and compound movements and our fundamental movements are the kind of principles that then get applied into specific situations. So wacky analogy, but there you go.
I like it.
I remember actually when we used to have a bit of a past where a lot of people came to us that got injured, and it was because we were doing what people were asking us that they wanted to do, meaning the client was dictating the session. So people would come to us and say, I want to build heaps of muscle, and I want to learn how to do Olympic lifting or whatever, and we would coach people on whatever they asked us to do. And Yanni said to us eventually, he just said, man, I'm sick of this. I am sick and tired of these
giving them what they need,
what
they want.
No, but you did. Do you remember this? Do you remember? You said, I'm sick and tired. These guys came to me. They wanted to get muscly. I told them they needed to do a foundations program. They said, no, I'm not doing it. I just want to, focus on bulking up. And 6 weeks later, they had tendinopathy and shoulder issues, and they had to stop and go to physio.
I almost got taken to court. I had someone threaten to take me to court.
Yeah. And we made the decision that what we were going to do is we were going to be very realistic with people, and people would say to us, these are my goals, and then we would say, okay, cool, well, this is where you're at and that's where you want to be, and these are the steps that you have to take to get you there, and we're going to take you on those steps. And I think that was a big step for us in the right direction, where it takes a little bit of time to build that trust within the community, because results don't come straight away, but then people start to see the results of their friends after 6 months or a year, and they start asking questions, and then you start getting referrals and so on and so forth. And I think for me, a lot of coaches, because we were scared of doing that, right? When you're a coach, you think to yourself, well, if I don't give this person what they want, they're going to leave and go somewhere else. And a lot of the time you're right. So you have to really believe in yourself, and you've got to back yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And look, that's what you're always juggling as especially a personal trainer. Athletic coaches. Geez, you picked a good time to muck with that, didn't you?
Yeah, this bloody thing, man. Anyway.
You got a lot of time before we go live to do a podcast and muck around with that.
Anyway, it's all right.
We got Rad here. If you can't see on the video, this is one of the great reasons why you should do what Clay Conway's doing. I'm sure you can hear it.
No,
he's decided to muck around with his mic boom arm right after we go live. So
can I just jump in here about the idea of like patient-led decision and shared decision making between coaches and athletes, or same context with like physios and or other practitioners and their patients. Like, I think I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea and say like, that the professional is always right and that the patient or the client has no say in it. But I think it often comes down to like a kind of communication issue where it's like, I remember there was lots of people who wanted to come here and they just want to do handstands and just want to do handstands all the time. And so they'd come in here being like, oh, why don't we spend more time doing handstands in this session? But, you guys with all your training and your experience in developing a handstand have realized that like the way you best get that skill is have a fundamental overhead mobility level, the whole body line, and like the strength of like holding that handstand position, and the strength through the shoulders and the load capacity through the shoulders, the wrist conditioning. And that's exactly what you're doing in the Unity program, is you're building up all those things, and then like the skill development is something that you kind of have to do outside of your own time. But if you just came in and did handstands every day, you wouldn't get like adequate sort of strength, flexibility, and load capacity from just hammering away at handstands, and you'd miss out on all the other lower body strength, all the other lower body mobility, and all of that. And so I remember that kind of conversation happening in the gym, being like, hey, we've got to stop like just doing what the people want, and explain to them that like if you really want to achieve that, then you need these foundational principles to then apply to that sort of sport you want to do. So it's not a matter of like saying, hey, patients or clients, like get out of here, you're wrong. It's like kind of that educational piece, and it's what we're doing here really, is trying to explain, like, you know, what we're trying to do is give you the tools you need, those principles to take away and apply to whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's right. And as a coach, it's very, very hard because you are, like what Rad said, you're challenged by a lot of people. And I know this firsthand because I've been a coach now for almost 17 years, or actually more. Yeah. And it is, it's very challenging when someone says, I want this and this is the time frame I've got to achieve it. And if you don't do it, and I will go to someone else, and you're desperate for the income, and you got to pay rent at your gym or whatever else that you're doing. And I said yes to that a lot, and I ended up saying yes to that to the wrong person who gave me a ridiculously short time frame to achieve a body composition goal, and he had some really bad structural issues that needed to be dealt with first. And I knew what the result was going to be. I'd already had 6 years experience training people, and I could just see it from a mile away. And lo and behold, he hurt himself on like week 3 of an 8-week program, and he was a lawyer, and he basically sent me a letter in an email summons to court saying that I had to go to court
because he was in the army, or after I'd gotten out.
When you're in the army, yeah. And I ended up smoothing it over with him, and we ended up remaining sort of somewhat friends after that. But it was like, holy crap, are you serious? Like, luckily I could send him an email because I'd put it in writing, because I was smart enough that every dialogue I had with someone that really was important, I would follow up with an email afterwards. And I had an email where a record of an email saying, I am strongly advising against doing this. I usually have a 12-week general preparations program that I believe you need to do. And I think we could speed that up and get it done in 9 weeks, but that will not meet your goal. And but it's just what your body needs, you know. Anyway, long story short, you always get pulled in two directions, and I agree with Phil that it requires a lot of education, but what it also requires is having some skin in the game so that you've got a little bit of authority. Personal trainers don't begin with that authority like a physiotherapist or a doctor does, and so the only thing that does it for them is a time in the game, experience, to be able to say no to that person, and one, not care about losing the income because he probably goes to someone else, but two, also for them sometimes to go, well, hold on, I've seen this guy's track record, he knows what he's talking about, maybe I should listen to him, you know.
Yep. We had to say no to someone just yesterday or the day before. We had an inquiry from somebody that was telling us how they had a pacemaker and they can't do high intensity training, but they really want to do group training and they'd like to come along, and what can we offer them? And I talked it through with Yanni, and we just said no, we can't do that because we just can't cater for that.
We're not the right fit for that person.
Yeah,
you know,
because we do group training and we can't really, you know, when certain people need the care that they need. And I'm only saying that because we've become good at saying no, and I think a lot of trainers aren't. But you know, yeah, I mean, if we go back to the topic of the show, you know, regardless of what your goals are, your trainer should be working on building your load capacity, building your confidence with the basic movements, building your strength, flexibility and fitness in a safe, progressive manner so that you work towards whatever that big goal is that you've got and you can do it safely. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it doesn't come as quick as they think it would or as they'd like it would, and the journey is a little longer than what a lot of people are willing to sign up for. And yeah, as what Yanni and I have both said, what's even more unfortunate for a lot of people is that a lot of coaches are not willing to be honest about that, and they just say, yeah, I'll do whatever you want, let's get you there. And yeah, it does lead to a lot of problems, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I wrote about this yesterday in my daily blog about the fact that success comes from patience. No successful person gets successful being in a rush. And that is the same for just about every facet of life, whether it's health, wealth, you know, or career success. There's just not many cases that you get there really quickly. And we spoke about it earlier on the physio special this week with Nilesh, talking about how often athletes, when they finally break through and make it to the big leagues and get selected for a professional opportunity, they're already injured because they've worked so hard and essentially rushed the process to get there as quickly as possible, and overtrain themselves and train themselves into an injury, and their career's over before it ever gets started. And it's not just professional athletes that are doing this. People are doing it left, right, and centre. The faster you make money, the quicker you lose it. Look at the history of lottery winners. To if you want reinforcement of that, there's no lottery winners that ever end up wealthy. And the same goes in exercise. The quicker you get it, the quicker the body transformation, the faster you lose it.
And it's not just patience; it's consistency. So you can't just wait for it. Like, you've got to consistently work at it as well. So it's the patience of going through that process that's so key.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was that. I don't even know the guy's name. It was a little bit arrogant in his videos. He was an American dude, an African American bodybuilder who was in his 70s, and he was talking about how he used to compete against Arnie. And I did really like his message, but he was having a little bit of a stab, saying, if you look at the tortoise versus the hare, I beat Arnie, because he's talking about the results that he has now versus the way that Arnie looks now. And the guy did look amazing. He was really... Do you remember that video? He was doing the splits in his video and stuff.
I can't remember.
You don't remember? He had an amazing physique and he was doing the splits and everything. But he said that the only things you need to worry about for real results is patience and consistency. And that really resonated with me, because it makes sense. You got to be consistent, and then you just got to be patient. You got to allow it to unravel in front of you.
So one could say that the true role of a coach and program is to teach patience and consistency. But if we break it down on a fundamental level, the true role of a coach and program is to focus on the basics and teach you the alphabet, like Phil said, teach you the principles that have stood the test of time, that are required to develop strength, flexibility and fitness, so that you can then go and deploy that in whatever you choose to do, whether it's just general life, whether it's a sport, whether it's a hobby, whatever it is. And the most important of those principles is to understand progressive overload and load capacity, and to build that load capacity in a way where you remain injury free and you become more injury resilient for whatever you're going to do, and then at the same time develop the attributes that you need for whatever you're looking for based on your goals. That might be speed, it might be endurance, it might be maximal strength, it might be suppleness, flexibility, agility, and those are the things you can develop in your program. But it's you, and then to a degree, at the end of that, you might need a coach to motivate you a little bit, and that's okay.
And that's what I think a really important topic to sort of discuss here, because it's all well and good to say, like, you should be doing it like patient and consistency, but one of the biggest barriers to people's like engagement with healthcare is them enjoying it.
Yep.
And so that's where like the real kind of art of the coach comes in. Like, there's the science of a coach. You could do everything kind of by the book, but then it kind of comes down to the coach to really find a way of making it engaging, making it interesting, and building that sort of intrinsic motivation in the activity itself. And so I think that's where with the Unity program becomes really powerful, where you have those every 6 weeks with the testing weeks, where you can kind of get that objective feedback that kind of reinforces the process and keeps you engaged, instead of just going for this like endless sort of striving of whatever. But then one of the things we're saying that training is not, and one of the things that coaching is not, is it's not competition, and your program shouldn't be doing those things that kind of test you there, because we want to build up the basic fundamental movements and flexibility, load capacity, and fitness and strength. And so where I think this is really key is find an expression of your fitness and your health that can then make the patient and consistent grind kind of worth it, and enjoyable, and you start getting those like tangible feelings of benefit in your external things. So for me, it's beach volleyball, surfing, and ocean swimming, whereas for Rad, it's when he tries out some new funky calisthenics move, or we all have like our different things that is a good expression of fitness that keeps you going. So it's like, we're not just telling you to be robots. Like, we want you to love doing exercise, but the thing that people get wrong is that they think that like the coach is the one that should be keeping them entertained with new funky stuff that doesn't actually get a result.
Yeah, 100%. And Isaiah here has asked a really great question. He says, "Hey guys, big fan of the UMS. I'm a PT with 1 year's experience. With the pressure of trying to make income, as you guys are discussing, is it possible to integrate a give what the client wants, but also slipping in what they need approach and still reach decent results? Now, first and foremost, I want to make it absolutely clear to everyone out there who is a personal trainer or a coach to some degree. I am not for 1 minute suggesting that you ignore a client's goals. When they come to you and they have a specific goal, that it's very important that what you do and what you construct achieves their goal. But you got to understand and you got to remember that they do not have the education that you've got, and they certainly don't have the education collectively that we all have sitting around the table here in the year's experience. And therefore, it's your job as a coach not only to get their result and not only to entertain them so that they stay long enough to see it through. It's your job to educate them as to why. And as long as you can justify whatever it is that you're doing properly so that it's not just, shit, then you absolutely can combine the two. Absolutely. And so you should. This is what Phil was talking about before, having an open dialogue between what they want to achieve and how they should best approach it, and you have to have, and my advice to you, Isaiah, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, is that you develop the confidence to have those conversations, with utmost conviction. This, you cannot, and where I went wrong in my experience that I shared before in that story is that that person, that individual, I should have said no to. I should have said, because they were so stubborn about it, and it was just really unrealistic, and it was a lose-lose situation for me. I could have gone in and gone at an approach that just never would have achieved the goal. I could have dialed down the intensity of the workouts. This person wanted to put on muscle mass and lean up in 8 weeks for a specific event. And that he was going to be walking around with his shirt off. And he gave me 8 weeks. And when I ran him through a series of very basic structural balance assessments, it became very apparent that he had some previous injuries that he was working on. And he also had some quite obvious structural balance postural issues that I knew from my track record would present problems. He had very rounded shoulders, very tight pecs, quite a bad restriction in one of his shoulders that was really obvious. And I just knew that if training for muscular hypertrophy is one of the most physically demanding programs you'll ever do. It's designed really to be such intense stimulus that the body is forced to adapt and lay down new muscle tissue, more muscle tissue, enlarge the cell size of the muscle tissue. And that whole process is only done by putting an immense amount of stress on the body. And if you've got underlying issues, they'll usually,
And one of the things you also have to do is do a lot of stress, but then also fuel it in a big way. And if you're trying to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time.
Yes, and this guy also, in the lifestyle analysis, he was a party animal. He had, he was boasting about how him and his partner had just built this amazing house, and they had this crazy house in a area of Sydney where they just had people over every weekend partying until the wee hours of the morning. He was a real socialite, and I was just like everything that I got that I learnt in his initial pre-exercise questionnaire. I was just like, this is going to be an absolute nightmare, and it turned out to be, and that it comes with experience. And but my advice to you is that you get really confident in what you're doing, and what you're doing here, spending time with us, educating yourself is the first step. Your education is going to be paramount to this, and then just systemize what you're doing in such a way that you can replicate the results, and then people will start to listen to you, and you won't have to fight for it.
You have to be able to explain why you do anything.
Yeah.
If you can't explain something and you're doing something that somebody doesn't associate it with their goals, then you're in real trouble. But if you can explain it well, if you can say, okay, you've told me that you want to get here, and this is how we're going to get you there. We're going to reverse engineer it by doing blah, 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 blah. And so this step is being done so that we can then move to that step. And then once that's ticked off, we're going to move to that. And that's going to take you to where you want to be. And if somebody can see that, they go, okay, wow, that makes sense. But if what they're getting is, I want to do this, but you're making me do this, and you're not telling me why, that you're not going to have a long.
And so having a really good understanding of the variables that a strength coach does manipulate in terms of, so basically like intensity of the movement, so how much weight you're putting on through external weight or leverage in the body, the range you're going through, the tempo of the movement, and then having a good understanding of like structural balance as well. I think if you can kind of get your head around all of those and then use the principles of specificity around, like, basically if you want to be faster, you need to train for speed. If you want to be stronger, you need to, work within a certain rep range. If you want to put on muscle, you work within a certain rep range. Like, kind of understanding all of those things and which variables are most important for that person. You can follow, like with the, with the UMS, it's all about like building structural balance into your workout and ticking off those fundamental movements. You can very easily make a good case for why you're doing each of the things, because for someone who, I don't know, maybe who's playing tennis, who thinks that they should be loading up a rubber band on a tennis racket and going ham, like that's not going to be as useful as like getting a good shoulder, like healthy shoulders from getting a balance of push and pull, and getting some external rotation strength in there to limit anterior glide, so you can in the shoulder joint, so you can whip the racket harder without sort of instability within the shoulder, and then working on like a foundations phase of building up like a good bit of muscle mass to provide support, and then working into a power phase where you're you're really working on speed and movement. Then you can kind of then make a very like clear like reasoning to your client, like, hey, like this is why we're doing each of these things, and suddenly now they're attaching like their outcome of wanting to hit the ball harder and get their racket, like their top serve speed up, to doing tempo reps on a bench press. Like, and that's
can I want to say this before we finish. Isaiah's written something in here that I feel that I would like to answer. He said, awesome, I get a lot of complimentary sessions for new members, which, if anybody doesn't understand what that means, he's saying that he's a trainer at a gym and he gets given new members as somebody that he has to give a complimentary session to, and it's up to him to try and win them over as a client, or just give them an experience that they enjoy at the gym. And he's saying, I try to teach them bracing techniques, hip and shoulder torque creation, and the discipline of training in terms of ego and dysfunctional overreaching. For most it goes over their head, but it seems like I'm on the right track. Thanks for the heads up. Bro, I'm going to give you some feedback that I wish I got when I was a year into the industry. I would say that you're not on the right track. The further a coach gets down the track with training people, the simpler the more they know, and the simpler they explain things to people. If you see the things that Yanni, Richard, Phil, and I work on with new people, we do the exact opposite. We try to find things that they really, really understand. Like, you don't want to be giving somebody in their first couple of sessions something that goes over their head. That does not work in your favor or in the client's favor. You need to find a way to communicate things to them that they're going to understand and relate to their goal. And I get where you're at, and I remember being there myself. Like, you kind of feel like it's almost your job to wow somebody with things that they've never heard before. But if you're feeling like it's going over their head, I don't think you're doing them or yourself any favors. Personally,
I think it's very hard, and Isaiah's done the right thing, and he's gone and got himself educated. He's got a Bachelor of Sports Exercise Science under his belt, which is exactly what I would suggest doing for a trainer if you can bear doing uni, rather than just doing a 8-week personal training course. It also fills you with a lot of useless knowledge. Like you have to be very selective about what you use to indoctrinate people into your ecosystem, and I think you need to come up with a system that you can really rally behind, and then for us it's a balance between strength, flexibility, and fitness, and we feel very strongly that that's the best way to train people, and that's what you need to do. And then you need to just figure out the best way of communicating that to your client, and they will rally behind you if you're passionate about it. You know, don't try to dazzle them with your education, because they'll never understand you, and most likely none of them, nor should they. Just create something that you really believe strongly, and then get them to rally behind that. You know, build your army, build your tribe around that.
Yeah, as someone who has just spent most of their life at uni, it's so good to understand all of these concepts really well. But then, definitely, like, the key thing is to understand like which bits to give when, and like who the right sort of audience for it is. So I definitely recommend that idea of, like, you know, like getting things nice and simple. See, there are going to be clients who are just so on board and they just want to know more and more and more, and definitely, you know, go into the weeds with them. But then with the people who just don't need so much information, it can be just a bit overwhelming sometimes. So it becomes a matter of like really reading people instead of just trying to, like, you know, give everything to everyone. And you know, that's something that I've been trying to figure out. But I think the more simply and clearly you can explain something, it's a sign of, like,
100%.
You really understand things.
Keep tuning in, because this year we have some huge plans. Over the next couple of years, we're actually creating a B2B certification for UMS, so that trainers can become a unified movement system coach certified. And we're going to be rolling out a lot of content for free behind that you guys can benefit from. So, you know, we'll be talking a lot more about discussions like this around coaching and being a great coach and personal trainer. So stay tuned, keep tuning into the podcast, get yourself involved in the UMS Movement Mastermind group. Heck, maybe even do a period of time as a UMS online coaching client. I know we've got a lot of personal trainers in that group, and physiotherapists and practitioners as well. Speaking of which, we're going to jump over there now. So everyone who is in the UMS online coaching tribe, jump over to that page on Facebook, and we will be live in just a minute or two. Thanks, guys, for tuning in today. We're going to bring this one in for a landing tomorrow. We're going to go deeper into how we do all this stuff, the role of a UMS coach and program tomorrow. Thanks very much. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.